those aches and pains are a big red flag telling you, hey, it's time to start exercising if you haven't already. And society and our friends and the way we feel comfortable is we tell ourselves, oh, it's just getting old. It's just what we do.
Are you ready to live your best life, make healthy choices, have success, have fun, and still have time for everything else? I'm here to teach you how to do that, and we'll all learn together from guests along the way as well. Follow along for some powerful tips on cultivating gratitude, making healthy choices for mind and body, and having fun doing it. What if all the angst and worry actually don't help? Oh my goodness, let's keep learning how to do this differently. OMG, hello friends. I am so excited to be here today for a fun and really practical episode. You may or may not be in your 40s, 50s, or 60s. If you are, we are talking about you today and me, actually. And if you're not, you'll still get some tips for getting fit. So let's get this started. With me today is Julie Cates, and she has a degree in exercise physiology and human performance. She's a certified personal trainer, muscle activation techniques RX practitioner, and resistance training specialist master, and has been doing this for over 10 years. She mostly works with women in midlife. So that's what we're going to be focused on today, and particularly figuring out how to exercise in less than perfect situations like chronic disease, joint pain, arthritis, tendinitis, all of these issues that we potentially face and that maybe keep us away from doing strength training particularly. And she customizes exercise for all different bodies and situations. Now, Julie's located in Schaumburg, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, Illinois, and has a fitness studio there, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, but also Exercise for Life Studios online. And so I'll definitely share the link in the show notes for that also. Well, hi, Julie.
Hi, Cheryl. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Yes. So I will start by saying that I really do believe in the power of strength training. I have tried over the years running, cycling, a million things. And unless I included some kind of resistance training, I never really saw as much of a change in my body. So I am fully on board with what you're talking about. And in fact, one of my episodes was about walking earlier in the podcast, the second episode, and I do that regularly, but I think we need a combination. So tell me a little bit about your background and how you got interested in building strength in midlife.
Yeah, great question. So actually, before I was even thinking like career, I was always really into moving a lot and I love science. So really, I actually thought I would be a doctor. But then as I got to the end of college and I was like, okay, well, it's time for me to apply for the next thing, I realized that I didn't think I really wanted to be a doctor where I wouldn't get to see people that much and I would have to see people really quickly, like in 15 minutes, those appointments. And so I thought I wanted to be a chiropractor. But in my midst of learning all about being a chiropractor, I actually fell in love with the muscle system. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is the thing. When people have strong muscles, they're going to have way less joint pain. They're going to be doing more of the stuff they want. And if I'm not here at the gym or at the fitness studio or online working out with people, then a giant group of the population isn't going to be able to work out because there's so many people in the population that are underserved. And a lot of these people land in that midlife women 50 and over category. And reason being is because fitness kind of, if you look at a lot of fitness things, Pilates, yoga, the class at the local gym you have, they all are kind of catering to the same people, which are people that can do a lot of stuff and not get injured very easily. And so I was like, hold on a second.
That's fair.
That is not serving a lot of people. But we know that strength training really serves every person, but it just depends on how you're doing it. So I kind of fell in love with the muscles, and then I went and got all these certifications that you said so that I can better understand how muscles and joints work. And then I thought everyone needs this. And then I realized early in my career that unless you have joint pain or a reason that you're not doing all the other stuff, then you're probably not going to seek out someone that's super technical like me. So I realized, okay, my main population needs to be individuals individuals that are already struggling with arthritic knees, already having an issue with their SI joint. And it's not that we're going to be doing quote unquote therapy with them, but no matter what you have going on in your body, chronic disease, something that flares up regularly, you have motion issues, whatever you have, we know that the stronger your body is, the better your body's going to be, and the more you're going to be able to do the stuff you want in your life, whether that's, going to the grocery store and feeling like I'm not going to fall over, or picking up your stuff so that you can travel on an airplane, or pick up your grandkid, or, go sit in an auditorium and watch your kid graduate for 4 hours. Whatever comes your way in life, the stronger you are, no matter what conditions you have, the better you're going to be able to do and participate in the things you want to do. So that's kind of how I got locked into women 50 plus. I'm not quite 50 yet, so I feel like y'all bring a lot of wisdom to me in life that I need, and I'll bring the muscle and exercise education. You guys can teach me about how to be a good mom.
You know what? I love that. And we were talking before we started actually recording about how we both have 2 kids, and mine are quite a bit older. So I'll be the wisdom, sure.
Great.
But you mentioned something that really caught my attention, and that was sitting at someone's graduation. So I joke with my friends quite a lot, and I'm in my early 50s in case the listeners don't know that, but I joke with my friends quite a lot that I can literally hurt myself by staying still too long. I get sore, not really an injury, but sore. And that is just not a thing that happens when you're younger. So you're right. The issues and the concerns can be different at this age for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And really, that is one of the signs that is telling your body, I need stronger muscles. And any woman, well, really, the decline usually starts happening around the age of 35. Like, your muscles naturally don't get better, bigger, stronger after the age of 35. You have to do a lot just to maintain it. And so as you reach 40 and 50 and 60, your body's going to talk to you more and more and more and say, hey, we need to be stronger, or you have to be cool with losing it. You know what I'm saying? And so there does become that pressure of like, wait, I never really had to think about this before. I never had to think about strengthening my booty before, but now it's hard to stand up, or it's hard to do the stairs, things like that.
So true. So true. And hopefully some of those things don't happen till 60s or 70s, but I guess we never know. We never know what challenges are going to come up. And actually, I'm looking at the questions here that I really wanted to hear about from you. And one of them was, okay, so what are typically the biggest challenges that women face headed into the 40s and 50s that you see?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that starts happening 40s, 50s is if you're not already exercising, a lot of women start experiencing aches and pains. And they like to call it, I'm getting old. And that's what we all say, and we giggle and we push it off. But it's also a sign that your body's becoming deconditioned. It's a sign that your muscles are not as strong or conditioned as they once were. And we're starting to feel it at that age because of that natural decline that I talked about. And if you aren't already exercising, you're going to experience that. Now, I say this is the biggest challenge because those aches and pains are a big red flag telling you, hey, it's time to start exercising if you haven't already. And society and our friends and the way we feel comfortable is we tell ourselves, oh, it's just getting old. It's just what we do. And so it's almost like the first warning sign that no one wants to listen to as the first warning sign. And starting today, no matter how old you are, is always going to be better than starting tomorrow or the next day. And there's always going to be benefit. But always acknowledging, hey, when my body's talking to me, that's a sign that, hey, I might need to get stronger. I might need to start doing this strength training thing, especially if you're not already.
Yeah. And, I want to throw in something there because I do always talk a lot about mindset as well. And that is that we also need to be kind to ourselves, because I like that you said starting today is better than starting tomorrow or in the future. So there's no need to be spending time beating ourselves up that we didn't start yesterday or a year ago or 3 weeks ago or whatever. Start today and go forward and leave all the head trash out of it is my additional advice. Yeah.
The great thing with exercise is you never show up on day one and exercise is like, oh, you've missed out on the last 30 years. No, you just start getting the benefits right away. And the cool thing is really, if you've never exercised, you're going to get the biggest benefits right in the beginning. So you're right. Always be kind to yourself and know that it's always going to be there and there's always a way for you to benefit from it. I will say, from your other question, the other biggest hurdle I think women 40, 50s, and 60s are having is what I brought up in the beginning, where it's like there's not a lot of content out there there that's really structured for women 40, 50, 60. I mean, if you look at all the really popular boutique gyms, and I could name a few, but I won't, but you look at them, you're like, that's not for my body, especially if you've never worked out. That's not going to be a really great fit for where you're currently at.
That's a good point. You're talking about gyms where you go and you do a class and you run on the treadmill and then you do the weights and then it's prescribed for you. That's a good point. Jumping into that without experience would be tough. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So we should all be kind to ourselves about that too. Okay. So I do want to build into this discussion, not just strength, but also flexibility. And this is personal for me because I do notice that my flexibility is not what it used to be. And so how do we kind of look at these so that they're not mutually exclusive? Or are they? Are they two totally separate things we have to do?
Really good question. I tell all my clients, I talk about this on my page, if your workouts, if your strength training is making you tighter, less flexible, less mobile, something's not right, because they actually should be working together. Okay, so one sign that you know that something is not going well in your workouts is that if your flexibility is becoming compromised. When you strength train, you actually should be noticing that your mobility, your flexibility, your ease of movement should be getting greater and should be getting more fluid. And actually, you should be feeling stronger in bigger ranges. And this is a very different effect than what happens when you stretch. So when you do strength training, it's important that you're doing full pain-free range. A lot of times we feel like if there's pain in a range, we just don't do that exercise. You actually should do that exercise, but only choose the pain-free section. Your range of motion and flexibility will and should increase. And that's actually the best way to increase flexibility, because we never want motion that's not strong. Motion that's not strong will lead us to injury. But when we do motion that is strong, meaning you did it in your weight training, it's going to be more likely to last and go into your lifestyle, right? Because a lot of us, especially if you're exercising for health, you don't go to the gym to spend some fun time in the gym. I mean, some people like it, some people don't. You really go to the gym so that you can do the other stuff in your life that you want, right? So like, I could hike up the hill if I wanted to, or I could sit in the bleachers for 4 hours if I wanted to. So again, remember, we're looking for like the outcome effect. Like, what are we taking from the gym, not what we're doing. So you want to have your strength training. You need to do full range in pain-free range, and that will really help you increase your flexibility. I don't find they should not be exclusive of each other. They actually should feed into each other.
Wow. I'm just processing that because that's not how I thought about it. And doing the movement with strength training in the pain-free range, I feel like that's going to be a game changer for a lot of people listening to this too.
It's a game changer, because if you hang out with anyone that remotely ever works out or moves their body, which everyone moves their body, you probably have a friend that's like, oh yeah, when I do the twist exercise, it's going to throw out my back. And so I don't do it, right? That's a smart decision. The problem with that is that now that twist movement, which you do in your everyday life, by the way, when you're not even thinking about it, is now highly vulnerable to injury, which is what we definitely don't want. We don't want you injured. We don't want you throwing at your back. So we have to figure out a way to do every exercise, but customize it to your body or the range that your body says is okay. And that's how we're going to be able to increase and improve the strength and function and flexibility of that motion. So you still want to do the exercise that you've labeled as it hurts me, but only do the very small range that doesn't hurt. And for some people, that just means leaving out 1 inch of the range, right? You do a full squat, you just leave out the very bottom part that hurts your knees. Or you're like, my knees hurt halfway down. Great, you're doing half squats, but you still have to strengthen those motions and those muscles. So that's one big customizable piece of like, hey, where is this hurting and where is my body saying it's okay?
So, okay, speaking as someone who I injured my knee slightly about, 10 years ago, and it's still, I don't do a full squat. Like, it still acts up. It probably is always going to act up. I'm not at the point where I need surgery or anything like that. But do you have some advice for someone like me who, I can do the half squat for sure. And I do that. And I understand that if my leg muscles are stronger, that supports my knees better. But what's your advice about dealing with something like that?
Great. Yeah, that's a great question. And I want to say, like, you are not alone. There are so many people with knee issues. So this will apply to a lot of people, but really these principles can actually apply to someone with knee issues, hip issues, back issues, because your back is made up of tons of little tiny joints, any area of the body. And this is what my husband and I teach in our program, the Exercise for Life Studios. But this is how you customize your exercise. And this is especially important when you have a joint issue.
Part of healthy living is gut health. So much of our hormones, digestion, and nutrition centers around a healthy gut. Every morning, I use a green gut glow drink to make sure that my brain, skin, nails, hair, and gut are at their best, and to make sure that I get more veggies than I would eat otherwise. I felt a difference for sure. Grab yours or have a look at www.bit.ly/green gut glow plus, or just find it in the show notes.
Okay, so the first thing is you're already doing the first step. You got to stay in the pain-free range, but you still have to do it. And pain-free, symptom-free range means you feel nothing except muscles squeezing. Now, the one that most people miss is they think that the stretching feeling is good. So when you're doing your squat, you don't want to feel stretching, you don't want to feel pulling, you don't want to feel pain, zinging, tightness, twinging, any way a lot of people describe.
Right.
Any of those things that you would describe, and you feel it, you stop right away. That's your body saying, yep, that's the end. We're done right there. And you keep strengthening in the range that's okay, no matter how small it is. Even if you're like, Julie, this is so silly. I'm only doing 2-inch squats. Are you crazy? I'm not crazy. Just do it. Keep doing it because your muscles will get stronger. The second thing is when you do your squats or whatever motion you're doing, you got to move slow. So this first principle, symptom free. Second principle, move slow. You got to move slow. The third principle is that you need to control your movement. So whenever you think of an exercise, there's parts of your body that move, like in a squat, your legs move or your knees move, right? And then the part that doesn't move is like your spine, right? It goes up and down, but only because your knees are going up and down. So you have to control the non-moving and the moving. So you think about those two parts. And then the last principle is focus on the squeeze that you're trying to have. So when you're doing your half squats, staying in a pain-free range, going slow, controlling your motion, you're also thinking about not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're thinking squeeze my muscles and activate my muscles. Research actually shows that the more that you are focused on the muscle that's working, the more muscle stimulus that's going to happen. And all health changes happen when we squeeze muscles. So we want to highlight the muscle squeeze. So apply those 4 principles when you're doing any exercise anywhere, whether there's knee issues, joint issues or not.
I love that. And it's interesting because one of the things I do is I do bar class, which is one of those things that people probably do struggle to walk right into without any preparation. So in bar class, they often remind us to pay attention to the muscle, to focus mentally on the muscle, whether it's leg or glutes or arms or whatever. And that agrees with what you're saying. And I do see that it makes a difference because sometimes we're just kind of, lifting the weight and we don't really pay attention. But if you think about the muscle, it does matter. And that goes right along with how I always talk about the power of thought. So it all kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Yes. And the more that you connect and think about your muscle, just think that is more body ownership that you have. And that is one thing we lose as we age. And the way we see ourselves losing it is we lose our balance more easily. So strength training is amazing for balance, especially if you're tuning in, not out. Most people go to the gym and try to tune out. Ooh, let's get entertained by the instructor or the music or what's on the news, or let me try to get as many reps as possible instead of tuning in. And so taking your brain and saying, hey, what am I squeezing here? What am I feeling here? Always looking for symptoms as you go, but trying to contract and feel the muscles squeezing. So I love that you're already thinking about that and you are getting instruction with that as well.
It makes a difference. Yeah, it makes a difference for sure. I can tell the difference. And I think it's good that we're talking about this for sure. So I'm going off of my plan a little bit, but I want to talk about balance because you just mentioned that.
Sure.
I know that it's common that we all maybe, if we stood on one foot or we stood on the other foot, one side would kind of have better balance on than the other. I know that's common. But if someone really feels like I'm getting to the point where I'm worried I'm going to fall or I'm very wobbly, I really need to work on my balance, what would your advice be?
That's a great question because this one is so confusing. What people usually think is like, okay, I probably should get on one of those balance boards and start balancing. And then the exercises progress to look so like some kind of circus move. And you're like, okay, what is happening here? I'm like, balancing on this crazy blinzy ball, all these things. Okay, so balance is a loss of your ability to be strong in ranges. Because where do you lose your balance? You never lose it when you're just standing there. You lose it when you reached over or when you're on one foot or when you're doing something funny, right? Never right in the middle because we're usually pretty strong in the middle. So what you have to do, number one, the first step if you want to get better at balance is you have to do total body resistance training. A lot of people don't want to hear that because they want to do something balancy. The first step is you gotta do total body resistance training because that's the main thing that's going to get your body more connected, like we just talked about, the brain muscle connection, and then also strong in your biggest ranges. And then the second thing that comes in way second is going to be skill training, which is just practicing balance. And it does not have to look like a circus move. My husband and I were so fed up with this, so he actually created an entire program called Strong and Balanced where we just did skill training, which means like you do your workout and then at the end 5-10 minutes of practicing balance. And what that's going to look like is maybe standing on one foot and reaching a toe out and practicing that movement, standing on one foot and reaching over. You don't have to put your body at risk for full body injury by balancing on some crazy ball thing to increase. That's a big problem. A lot of people don't consider, they think that exercise, there's always only just benefits. And if you have any kind of negative repercussion, then it's just your problem. But really, there's some poor exercises out there where it's like the risk is really high and the benefits really low. So I try to switch that, especially for women 50 and over. You're like, hey, let's get the benefit as high as possible and the risk as low as possible. So for balance, total body strength training, full range of motion, brain body connection, all the things we already talked about. And then doing some balance training, but making sure you don't need to do like a whole hour of balance training to practice the skill of balance.
Okay, that's useful. Yeah. And it makes sense to me. If your strength is being built evenly everywhere, then ideally, even if you lose your balance, you can kind of right yourself and the movement is a little easier because you're stronger.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And when you do any movement and you think, oof, that was tough on my balance, because most of the time when my clients are like, Julie, I'm terrible at balance, we need to work on my balance. I'm like, why do you think that? They're like, well, I went to a yoga class and I could barely do any of the moves. Well, that is actually an example of a great way to improve your balance, because if it wasn't challenging your balance, then it wasn't going to be enough to make your balance better. So every time you do a movement that's tough on your balance, great. That was a great stimulus to help you get better at balance.
So you're saying we can't be an expert right at the beginning.
Right. And I think we have a terrible misconception that we're going to look like the gymnasts on the Olympics when we have good balance. I'm like, no, good balance actually looks really wiggly because balance is not a thing. It's like something we manage. So when you're doing that goofy, maybe embarrassing thing that you did to keep your balance, that's actually your body doing a good job of keeping its balance. Yeah, there's some skills that we can practice to get you better at balance, but the main thing is going to be building strength, full body, and then doing some skill training.
I love that perspective. I have a vision in my head of somebody trying not to fall over and then patting themselves on the back. Wait, that's good balance. Good balance.
You did a good job. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let me give you kind of a broad question as we start to wrap this up and see where we go from here. What exercise mistakes are most common that you see and what should we do about them?
So the first thing, I think that strength training is slowly becoming more emphasized for women 50 and over, which I'm very excited about. But if you are not strength training, I really encourage you to start strength training. And I think a lot of people don't strength train because, again, they don't see the flavor out there that they like. They're looking at that studio and this studio and that big gym and this small gym, and no one's doing the thing that they like. And a lot of them, if you think about the principles, those 4 principles we talked about, they're not going to fit your body because they're not doing all 4 of those things. And that's going to leave everyone's body very prone to being sore, being overworked, and really being disconnected. And we really want to take your fitness, especially when you're a midlife woman and older, to be doing the opposite. We really don't want you feeling sore. We want you feeling better and more energized after you exercise. So I think the biggest thing that I want to emphasize is keep trying to look for that resistance training piece, because a lot of women in their midlife love to walk and that's what's comfortable. And I love that, but we want to add to it. And so walking and cardio, they fill an amazing role for us. And I never want to down-regulate the importance of that, but strength training also has a really important piece in terms of like lifestyle and your strength in what you're doing. I know a lot of my clients, they want to be able to get on the floor with their grandkids and travel and do these physical things that you might not think of as fitness, but it really does change when you're strength training. So I hope that answered your question, but that would be the biggest mistake or the thing I don't want you guys to leave out. And that's kind of the gap, that lack of flavor for women 50 and over. That's what I've tried to slowly fill for people.
Yes. You know what? I love that too, because I did a whole podcast episode on walking. So I'm fully on board with walking. Yes. However, years ago, now I can't remember if I said this at the beginning, but I'll say it again anyway. Years ago, I did a running program with a few friends who talked me into it it was about a summer-ish period, a little longer than that, to work up to a half marathon. And I ran like a turtle speed, but I think I got to 12 miles. And so I was proud of myself, but I didn't lose a pound. I didn't lose an inch. And that time, which was a long time ago now, I realized, wait a minute, this is not going to do what I want it to do. And I started to do some resistance training. And from then on, I did understand that it needed to be both. My body responded to weights, not even heavy weights like my husband does, but weights, and it made a big difference. So yes, I fully agree. It needs to be a combination.
Yes. You know, I used to always talk about this, and I asked one of my clients, like, what do you think? Am I being mean by saying you need to do weight training and not do so much walking? But I wasn't really saying don't do walking. I was just saying, like, walking isn't everything. She's like, I don't know, maybe I really love to walk. So then I realized what I teach now is there's 2 buckets of exercise. You got to fill both. One is the move bucket. So that would be your walking, your jogging, your moving around the mall, or, you know, your general movement. But then you have to have the build bucket. And so I think my ladies started really liking that because they're like, okay, great, I can fill both. Because I never want to discredit the walking. It's just there seems to be a huge bias towards walking. And I get it. It's easy to do. You just need shoes. You don't
Yes,
need
100%.
membership, and it's fun. I love walking, but it doesn't fill all the physical needs for building and maintaining muscle, bone mass, brain size and sharpness, and also metabolism, which a lot of women want, and then they get really disappointed when they're not getting it from the walking.
Yes, metabolism, such an important point. Yes, I know that muscle burns more calories than fat. So the more muscle we have, the higher the metabolism. If that isn't a magic formula, I don't know what is.
Exactly. So yeah, make sure you're doing that strength training. And if you haven't found the right flavor for you, then use the principles that I talked about earlier in this podcast.
Yes. And I love the move and the build. I'm going to remember that. And everybody listening needs to remember that. I love that. Do some move, do some build. We're absolutely using that. And I will make sure to put your website for your online program in the show notes too, in case people want to come and have a look, because tell us a little bit what you're doing with that.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, we were completely shut down. And my husband and I, we were very custom. You have to come in. We cannot work with you online because how would we possibly figure out how to help you if you're not here in person? And then during COVID, because we literally couldn't see anyone in person, we realized we had to get over that limiting belief. So that's how we developed these 4 principles. And we found that when people use the 4 principles that we reviewed, then they are able to really customize their exercise without being here in Schaumburg, Illinois, which was pretty cool. So we started an exercise database where if you find that these principles are really, you know, your special sauce, then you can come in and exercise with us. And we have so many workouts by now. We've been working on this for years since the shutdown.
Yes.
And I also do, so anyway, so we have a membership and you can exercise, but we're teaching you through these principles so that it's being really, really respectful for your muscles and your joints and really trying to emphasize the mega benefit with minimal risk.
Yes.
I do also have a free program. It's for women, and it's almost like little demos of the main membership. So you can check that out. Yeah, it's at exerciseforlifestudios.com/women. But that's also the website. You can check out the membership if that is something that would be of interest to your listeners as well.
I love it. Thank you. And everyone can find Julie at Strong Women Over 50 on Instagram also. So have a look at that. And let me wrap up with, I ask this to everyone because we're making a little Spotify playlist. What is your favorite song to listen to when you want to put yourself in a better mood?
Yes. Okay. I love this question. This is so fun. Okay. My favorite song ever. My husband actually dedicated it to me. So now every time I listen to it, I just love it and I smile like the most giant smile. But it's One Direction called You Don't Know You're Beautiful. Do you know that song?
Yes. I love that song.
Dance around when it comes on. It's so fun. And it just makes me feel like powerful and beautiful and like I'm the bomb. So I hope someone else feels that way when they listen to it.
Yes. Okay. I love it. And so everybody can head over to the podcast website, which is onamission.bio/OMG Teach Me. I'm going to put the Spotify playlist. It's going to gradually grow as we get more recommendations for those songs. Thank you for that. And thank you, Julie. I think that people will get a lot out of this. I know I've gotten a lot out of this, and I really appreciate you being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having this podcast and sharing your message, Cheryl.
Thank you. I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode. OMG, I would be so honored if you would take a moment, leave a rating, and leave a review. Let's get this message out further into the world. Make sure you've subscribed as well, and why not grab a screenshot and share it on your social media. Now it's time to head down to the show notes and see the resources I mentioned. Go find what you love.